It's well known that in Sonic 1 that the stage select shows the original way the game was supposed to go, and as we could see from it, Labyrinth Zone was meant to be the second zone of the game. And I'm just sitting here thinking, would this game have been as popular as it was or successful as it was if that stayed like in the game? I mean, Green Hill would probably still be beloved, but it's just that people already don't even like the transition from Green Hill to Marble Zone. So to take that out and replace it with something much harsher, I don't think it would have went over well. In the Call of Duties that were made with the old engine, there was a glitch where you could, reload your gun, but it wouldn't reload properly. Like how when you normally reload, the sights go away, but the glitch makes the sights come back, and even though the weapon is still doing the reloading animation, it doesn't count as a reload. And well, it wasn't that big of an issue because it was a pretty uncommon glitch, except for, weirdly, some reason in World at War where you could actually activate it pretty easily. I mean, all you have to do is start reloading, then run in a little, and then you have the glitch happening. And with this glitch, you could either cancel out the reload by shooting, or aim in and watch the animation while aimed in. My question is, why do the World at War weapons even do this? I mean, they're so ingrained into it that you can even do this glitch with the Black Ops versions of them. Alright, when you're playing any shooter game or anything that you have to aim with, like in the game, what do you use to aim and what do you use to shoot? And of course the answer is you use the left trigger to aim and the right trigger to shoot. So why is it Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on the Xbox has it completely reversed? Well, you might answer that maybe this is just something with the Xbox Grand Theft Autos, and all of them are like this. But in reality, here's GTA 3. Left trigger to aim, right trigger to shoot. Then we have Vice City, which again, the same thing, left trigger to aim, right trigger to shoot. But then we get to San Andreas, and it's like, why is it reversed? Right trigger to aim and left trigger to shoot. That's completely backwards. When I finally got around to playing Sonic Adventure and beating the final boss in it, I kinda saw the fight itself as a bit underwhelming. Now granted, this was probably bound to happen anyway since I had previously played Unleashed and its awesome final boss, as well as Generations' better version of this boss fight, and of course those are much better because they came out long after Sonic Adventure. But I mean, where I'm mainly coming from is that the fact that even in comparison to the game that came out 4 years previously, Sonic 3 and Knuckles' final boss, I see it as a downgrade. From chasing Dr. Robotnik around the orbit of Mobius to just a flooded city. I don't know. Maybe if I was around back in '98, I would have been so blown away by Sonic's jump into 3D that I don't even think I could have considered such a thing. When you really think about it, the GTA 4 endings are weird. The deal ending makes no narrative sense and sees a character die that you don't want to die, but it has a much bigger impact with that character's death, and with you chasing the main bad guy during the final mission. While the revenge ending makes more narrative sense, but has less of an impact with a throwaway character dying and the final mission also starring a throwaway antagonist. It really is a huge catch-22.
So this is what the dream feels like. This is the victory we longed for.
So at the end of the first Dead Rising game, do the survivors that you save get killed no matter what? Because when the military starts coming in and Otis leaves you that note about him escaping, I always thought that it said that he took the survivors with him. And I thought that was for like the comedic sense of how did he get all 50 or so survivors onto one helicopter. But after rereading the note, it seems that he escaped while the military was actually taking the survivors with them. And since we eventually learned that the military wasn't leaving anyone alive, zombies or otherwise, it's like, did we really just lose all the survivors? Which is not only a very dark and depressing way to end the game, but also it's just the futility of saving them, especially considering how hard it is to save survivors in this game. So, what happened to Captain Price in the first Call of Duty? I ask this because after doing a few successful missions, him and you and another guy get picked for a special spy mission on board a German Navy ship, and eventually your cover is blown, but you still need to complete the mission, which sees you planting bombs onto their engines, but like halfway through, Captain Price just disappears. Like, vanishes. Like, his body isn't even there. And this just always confused me because it's like, the guy at the end just says that he was dead, and we're just supposed to assume that he was dead, but again, there was no body. It's just weird.
We lost the captain. Damn, he was a very fine man. Let's get the hell out of here.
So here's a legitimate question. Why did the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game release like a whole month before the actual movie? I mean, granted, that's a very short time span, but still, if you were to get the game first, you would literally experience the whole movie and spoil it for yourself. And then there's the other side of the coin, in which I wonder if there was anyone out there who bought the game when it first released but wouldn't play it until they saw the movie. It also makes me wonder if there were any other games based on movies that came out before the movie was based on. This really is just a bizarre thing to see. Now, I can't be the only one who prefers Blackout to Warzone, right? The reason I prefer it is because it's more defense-orientated than Warzone's preference for offense, like assaulting. It feels like a game of hide-and-seek, but once you get your drop on your enemy, you better kill them or else you're gonna screw yourself over. And because of that, it feels much more tactical, like needing to find your enemies, weed them out, find out where they are through their noises or footsteps, plan your approach, and then finally taking them out. And then add in the fact that you only have one life, every encounter becomes much more adrenaline-filled, because you really don't want to die, you have no second chances. And I also believe because of that, it makes you play much more sharper. I was never interested in the Legend of Zelda series outside of like a few games, one of which happens to be the first game that was released. And although I played it and I liked it, it's just the issue of I played it and I really don't know what to do. Which I get is the point of it though. And I do want to beat it without looking up a guide, but at the same time I just don't want to spend like hours upon hours running around not knowing what to do. Because, you know, if you play with a guide, that kinda defeats the purpose of exploring the world and finding out what to do on your own. The game might as well be playing on autopilot at that point. Out of all the retro zones to reappear in Sonic Mania, why was Oil Ocean Zone one of them? I mean, realistically, the only reason I could think of it returning is just solely for the dumb joke of lighting the oil on fire with the flame shield. But I mean, other than that, I got nothing because, well, the original level sucked. But to give credit where it's due, I do think that the remix version of this level does not suck. I actually like some aspects of it, such as the submarines that appear in it that you can go inside. Spy Hunter is probably my personal favorite arcade game of all time, and today it really sucks that this series is lost to time more or less due to Midway's bankruptcy. I mean, I doubt whoever owns the rights to this series is ever gonna make another game of it, but if there ever is another game in this series, I hope it's either an enhanced version of the arcade game like the Pac-Man Championship Editions, or another game in the form of the 2001 remake. I mean, I just like to see this series not be completely forgotten about. I always loved the little things about Roller Coaster Tycoon games, like being able to name your own rides. And your guests. Or pop balloons. Or click on ducks to make them quack. And I can't forget about the best of them all, being able to drown your park guests. When Sonic CD released, it did so with two completely different soundtracks, one for the Japanese and European markets, and one for the American markets. And well, I'm not really here to comment on which one I prefer, but I am here to say how neat of an event this is. I mean, there is just something cool about the idea of two different sets of people from two completely different countries trying to interpret the music for these zones. Not only for what they were, but also the worst versions of them and the best versions of them. And I mean, the results speak for themselves. The Japanese soundtrack is much more fast-paced and more in line with pop music, while the United States soundtrack is much slower and more in line with rock music. And easily the best example to compare is the music for Metallic Madness. In Mega Man 3, I always hated that visual glitch at the bottom right of the stage select. Like, it just bugs me that it's there. It should have been fixed before the game shipped out. I mean, they just had to have known that it existed. It's not like half of the time there or a quarter of the time there, it's always there. And this is unfortunately true regardless of which version you're playing, whether it's the original or on a collection. I mean, I can't think of another glitch that's been so obvious yet so everlasting. Well, I guess that's the price to pay with authenticity. So, Halo Infinite introduced a new feature into the series where you could pick up and throw barrels at enemies. And I just think this is funny because I played a completely different first-person shooter where this type of attack exists. That game being the infamous Duke Nukem Forever. And I honestly don't know if the people who made Infinite saw this in Forever and decided to put into their game, but well, better. But regardless, it's just funny to me to see a reused mechanic from what is often considered one of the worst games of all time. You know, it sucks to think that there will never be another Geometry Wars game, probably, but at the same time I understand why there won't be. That simple fact being that they kinda did everything that they could with that series, with the first game refining the gameplay from its arcade machine Easter egg roots, and the next two games adding in multiplayer, new game modes, a secondary ship that helps you out, and even a sort of adventure mode. And then you get to the final game where they refine the adventure mode and then added in as well boss fights. And yeah, the final game basically managed to put these elements all together and perfect them, as well as add in a few more new things, and really that's it. You can't go anywhere with that anymore. I always loved doing this Easter egg in the first Sims game, the one at the beginning of the Get a Life story mode, during the dream sequence, where normally your wife would get into the hot tub, then you would join her, then you would wake from the dream. But if you kept ignoring her and didn't get in, she would eventually tell you that it's game over and that you have to restart. I always thought that was funny. So in the first Castlevania game, there's a part in which you can see like part of the castle in the background on one of the stages, and well, I mean, what am I supposed to take away from this? It's clearly like flipping me off. I mean, it's like an extended hand just giving it to you. And I mean, considering how hard this game is already, do I really need this extra fuck you from the creators? Regardless, it is still a pretty funny visual. The Sega Genesis is home to some of the best beat-em-ups of all time, with both the Streets of Rage trilogy and the Golden Axe trilogy. And another game on that list is Comics Zone, a game where a man gets sucked into his own comic book and must fight against his own evil creations in order to escape. And yeah, the game's great, the music's great, the gameplay is fun, and the visuals are actually like you're in a comic book. So then my question is, if this game was so great, why didn't it get any sequels? I mean, I get this game came out really late in the system's lifespan, like 1995, but I mean, they couldn't have made a sequel for the Saturn or even the Dreamcast or even today. I mean, Streets of Rage 4 exists, so I mean, why not make a Comics Zone 2? Why is it in the Fallout games that the highest amount on the VATS targeting system is only 95%? I mean, after a certain point, you'd think the game would just say screw it and allow it to go to 100%, but it never does, regardless of how accurate the weapon you're using is or how high of a level you are. I mean, I get it's there to keep you on your toes and be like, you're not always guaranteed to hit your shots, but I mean, that basically never happens, and even if it does, you just end up hitting them on the second try anyway. So for the SpongeBob movie game, the cutscenes for the most part use, like, pictures straight from the movie. I mean, not completely accurate pictures, but like rough draft pictures, I guess. Or at least that's the console version, while on the PC version, it uses pictures straight from the movie. And I bring this up because it's used for literally the entire game except for one specific picture. That picture being David Hasselhoff, because just like in the other versions of this game, they couldn't, or I guess they didn't use the likeness of him. And I bring this all up because whoever drew this clearly wasn't working on SpongeBob. I almost want to say that this was drawn by Butch Hartman. I mean, the face looks like it, the ears where they usually go in his show, and I mean, he always sneaked himself into his own show with his face, so I'm wondering, did he manage to sneak himself into a SpongeBob game? I never liked playing Minecraft alone, not only because of just the loneliness aspect, but also because of progress not being done anywhere else within the, like, world, if that makes sense. I mean, we all know how big Minecraft worlds are. It feels pointless to just have one piece of land be used by yourself, while the other sets in the world are just untouched. And plus, I always loved people going off to do their own thing, and then me being able to go and see what they have done, like what they built and what they managed to acquire. The game just feels much more alive with more people. I've always felt like the Final Zombies maps in the Treyarch Call of Duty games were always a prelude to the next game in the series. You had Doris in World at War, which was the culmination of that game, but also the standard for Black Ops. You had the very experimental Moon at the end of Black Ops, which was very indicative of how experimental the maps got in Black Ops 2. You had Origins at the end of Black Ops 2, which literally feels like the blueprint for the Black Ops 3 maps, and then finally at the end of Black Ops 3 you had Revelations, which took bits and pieces of older maps and put them all together and made a little bit of new areas out of them. And I feel that this is very similar to what they did in Black Ops 4 with the many remake maps that they did in there. Am I the only one who doesn't dislike Sonic free riders? I mean, I get it, it's frustrating to get the Kinect to work and play the game properly, but once you get the Kinect into the right position, like I did, it was actually starting to be kind of fun. But I just think the game is neat. It's cool to do all these actions in real life that affect how you do in the game. Like needing to throw, like do a throwing action to use one of your items, or jump anytime you're near a ramp to get a better jump score. I mean, there are other really cool aspects about this game, like the tracks honestly being really well designed, the music not being half bad, and the many different types of missions that are available, as well as game modes. I mean, hell, I would even say that out of the 4 Sonic racing games that I own, that this is the second best out of all of them.